Hi, and welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be the first one of a new series called TestRoom, where I'll be reviewing and testing various products. So, you've probably heard of the new Segway-Ninebot E3 Pro, which I got behind me. It's Segway's newest budget electric scooter with promising specifications for its €500 price point. In standard Segway fashion, the scooter is packed with many features, and they also promise a range of up to 55 kilometers in their standardized test. Well, we're not here to glaze at the specs really, so in this video I'm going to put the E3 Pro to the test. My goal is to focus on multiple range tests for different scenarios, but I'll also give you an idea of what it is to ride the scooter daily, with all its bells and whistles. Let's start by going through the scooter's many features. If you want to jump straight to the range tests, you can use the timestamps down below. For this generation of E-Series scooters, Segway decided to give us a full suspension setup. Both the front and the rear wheels are equipped with elastomer-based suspension, and I can tell you, the ride is really smooth. The suspension does as good of a job at dealing with bumps and vibrations as the hydraulic suspension on the Xiaomi 5 Max, which I also got to test. The bonus of this type of suspension is the reliability and low maintenance. When it comes to the brakes, on the front we have our drum brake system, which offers excellent stopping power, provided the fact that you properly tighten the cable regularly. The rear motor also helps with electronic braking. In my tests, the stopping distance from 25 km an hour to 0 was a little over 4 meters. It's true that disc brakes are usually snappier, but overall I prefer drum brakes due to their low maintenance. With a disc brake, I used to change the brake pads more often due to them becoming contaminated rather than them wearing out. The drum brakes on this scooter are still enough to tip you over if you don't react and lean backwards during an emergency stop, which also happened to me while testing. On the rear we have the electric motor, capable of accelerating with a peak power of 800 watts. The throttle response is very smooth and the regen braking is also very predictable. The propulsion on this scooter is very pleasant and feels premium. Nothing else to say about the motor really, just a good experience overall. Moving up the scooter, we'll find a folding mechanism, which is not located on the stem but rather on the extension of the footboard. This means that folding the scooter also raises the front wheel. Keep in mind that this will make the scooter longer when folded, but it gives the advantage of being able to turn the handlebars left or right if you plan on putting it in a trunk. To fold the scooter, you release the latch on the stem, then you release the folding lever, on which you need to press firmly with your foot. The stem will latch onto the rear fender and that's it. Moving up the stem, we'll find a folding latch and a hook capable of holding up to 2 kilograms of your groceries or whatever you plan on carrying. Up top we have the display, which I think is beautifully designed. On the left we find the brake lever and turn signal buttons. And on the right we have the throttle lever and the power button. Turning on the scooter, the screen lights do a nice little animation. To switch drive modes, you double press the button. To toggle the lights, you just short press it. And to turn off the scooter, you long press it. The Segway Mobility app is decently packed with features and settings like regen braking strength, start speed and traction control system. You also have your dashboard, which shows useful information about your ride. On global versions of the scooter, the app also has additional options like cruise control and underside RGB lighting, but here we have the European version. About traction control, it has a really simple mechanism, and it just limits the acceleration of the motor so it cannot jump to the max speed immediately, but in a more realistic time interval. To test it, try to push yourself with your foot while accelerating and TCS is on. The scooter will feel excessive acceleration and it will think that it's slipping, and it will cut the power to make the motor accelerate linearly. Actually, a better way to test the traction control system is to accelerate on a slippery surface while jumping. So here I found some pretty bad pavement, some pretty sandy and dusty pavement, as you can see. And I will record it first with TCS disabled. And now with TCS enabled. The response of the TCS is really fast, so it will definitely react in time if you slip on sand or other slippery surfaces. Really nice premium feature for such low price. Another premium feature of this scooter is the integration with the Apple FindMy network, which allows you to locate your scooter if lost or stolen. You can also play a beeping sound directly from the FindMy app. Be aware that the FindMy network relies on other people's iPhones around the scooter, so it may not be the most reliable method of finding a stolen scooter. The scooter itself does not have any GPS module on board. When it comes to riding in the dark, the Ninebot E3 Pro feels genuinely safe. First, the front light, which is plenty bright. This focused beam pattern lets you see very far, but also makes you very visible to other traffic participants. The beam of light is directed straight ahead, unlike some Xiaomi scooters which are angled slightly downwards, making them not so useful. The taillight is also bright and visible from afar, but the real advantage of this scooter are the handlebar mounted turn signals. I'll be honest, their placement does hide them from some angles, making me wish they added a second pair of rear turn signals behind the deck. But all in all, they're pretty useful whether you are in traffic or among pedestrians. Now, probably the reason you clicked this video, the range tests. I will do multiple range tests, which you can find times 4 down below. The goal is to have a much clearer idea about the real-world range you're able to get. So yeah, we're out here with the Eco Mode range test. I've already done the Sport Mode range test. We got Strava on. I've actually started this 0.56 kilometers ago. We're gonna take this into account and we will be recording the battery percentage by screenshotting every once in a while this screen here. And for the elevation, the speed and all that, we will be using Strava. We will be starting right now. We're on eco mode, so the max speed is 15 kilometers an hour. So let's go. So we have gone for about 3 kilometers and we have 94%, which is promising. What I've noticed during the sport mode range test, which happened off camera, is that sometimes when accelerating at full throttle in sport mode, the power actually jumps over 800 watts, so something like 900. I will just show you right now. I will just switch the scooter over to sport mode. We're in sport, but you'll see, especially when accelerating from 10 kilometers an hour or so not from a standstill, it will jump. So let's just try it out now. Just look at the power there and go. There you go, close to 1000 watts. Even though the manufacturer states a peak power of 800 watts, the peak power can actually jump to almost 1000 watts. It's really powerful. It gets up to 25 kilometers an hour pretty quickly. The thing is, this Ninebot E3 Pro E feels about the same as the Xiaomi 5 Max, which I got for a few weeks. It's actually more powerful than 800 watts. It's worth noting. It's actually a 900 something watt peak power motor, I guess. Let's continue with the eco mode range test. So while we're at it, riding pretty slow at 15 kilometers an hour, let me just point out some of the conditions of these tests. Right now it's like 21, 22 degrees outside, and that is the reason why the park is very crowded. This is the reason why there are a lot of stop and goes. Even in eco mode, I will be stopping and going, so it's pretty realistic scenario. If I pointed out the 1000 watts on sport mode, I guess it's worth pointing out that even on eco mode, which they don't state the max power for eco mode, but on eco mode I've noticed the max power could jump upwards of 850 watts while accelerating. Even though the limit is 15 kilometers an hour, for that very short period of time there's a burst of, like, even right now, let me just record it right now. There you go, 900 something watts in freaking eco mode. So yeah, we're just gonna continue with a range test. But anyway, I was telling you about the power draw on eco, and I forgot to mention the test conditions. I'm not going to be doing any kind of range saving. In the sport mode test, there was very little stop and go, so it was kind of continuous. Of course, I rode through streets and traffic lights and all that stuff. But for eco mode, I'm not doing that because frankly, it's too slow for traffic. We will just go through the park. And right now we're at 86% and almost 6 kilometers. Okay, so I just rode some more and the results are in. I didn't want to kill the battery completely, so I did stop at 28% and we made about 26 kilometers. Pretty good result. And yeah, that is about it for this eco mode range test. And there you go, the scooter just turned itself off. Now let's jump straight to the computer and analyze the results for both this range test and the sport mode range test, which unfortunately I did off camera. So after analyzing the data, I've come to the conclusion that we do not need a third drive mode test or something, because the results are not that different between sport and eco, and I think it's fair to say that a drive mode test would fall right in between. But let's look at the data. So let's take a look at how I processed my data. I'll also show you my screen here. What I did was take the Strava data, which I then converted to CSV and imported it straight into Excel. Using the screenshots from the Segway mobility app, I also filled in these two columns, so the battery state of charge and the distance reported by the scooter, because the distance reported by the scooter and the distance reported by Strava are actually a little bit off. So you're gonna have to trust the one you choose to trust. Using this data, I created this graph, which on the horizontal axis has the distance traveled as measured by Strava, and on the vertical axis has the battery state of charge. But I also chose to put the speed in yellow and the altitude in blue. Now, looking at the sport mode range test results, we can see that I stopped the test at about 25 kilometers. It was 25.3 kilometers as measured by the scooter, but just under 25 kilometers as measured by Strava. So let's say a rough 25 kilometers and a 7% battery remaining. Of course, as I mentioned, the speed was rather constant, as you'll see, compared to the eco mode range test, and it has some spikes, but these are errors from Strava. These are not real speeds. The scooter was capped at 25 kilometers an hour and there was no significant downhill. Anyway, this is the reason why I might choose not to trust the Strava distance reading with all my heart. But anyway, looking at the eco mode range test results, we can see here that I stopped the test at about the same as the sport mode range test, but with 29% battery remaining. But because the discharge rate was so linear in respect to the distance traveled, you can see the trend line here indicates that we would reach about 10% at a distance traveled of about 32 something kilometers. So that is a pretty good result, but it's pretty close to the sport mode range test, and I'm not so happy with it because at 15 kilometers an hour it's actually really slow, and I would not expect anyone to ride like this except for like in a park or on sidewalk, but not in traffic certainly. And you can see the speed fluctuating here like crazy, especially in the first part of the test. And the fact that it does not get that much extra range over the sport mode means that maybe you shouldn't even use it. Like, there's no point. This is my personal opinion, of course. But anyway, in both tests, as you could notice, the altitude does not make that much of a difference because, you know, the test was performed in Bucharest and it's a pretty flat city. So your mileage may vary. If you live in a hilly area, you may get even worse results. Now, to end this video, there's one more thing to note. When I first got the scooter, I would get really bad range, like up to a maximum of 20 kilometers on sport, maybe even 17, 18 kilometers. This was because out of the box, the tires do not come inflated to the recommended tire pressure. And here on the Segway website, you can see for the E3 series, we have a recommended tire pressure of 42 to 48 psi. That's about 2.9 to 3.3 bars. So please note that the tests were made with the tire pressure in the recommended range. So that's about it for the Ninebot E3 Pro range test and review. If you have any more questions, don't forget to leave them in the comments. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like button. And if you want to see more videos like these, hit the subscribe button. That's pretty much it. Bye bye.